the British justice system is demented. I realise I'm smiling. You might be thinking, well, like, it's not quite as serious as you think. But no, this is going to get a bit dark, and I'm just so tired of. It's not even two-tier anymore. It's worse than two-tier. It's an active attempt to create injustices and cover up and like conceal things on the other side of the scales. And there would be no rhyme or reason to it if there wasn't just an ill intention behind it. And that's the only thing that's the only conclusion I can come to. The people who operate the system are pathologically politically correct, and this informs everything that they do. So if a foreign man does something terrible, they give him the minimum possible punishment. And if a native man does something that's not really that bad, they give him the maximal possible punishment. And it's like, okay, well, again, you can describe it as two-tier, but you're not fully encapsulating the weight of what is happening in this country. And I just hate to see it.
Well, it's entirely political to the point whereby you have these examples of cases where a paedophile can walk free, whereas someone who posted something online gets 3 or 4 years in prison.
Yeah.
And
we'll come to that, in fact.
Okay.
We'll come to that. So you may remember back in August, an officer was, 2 officers, in fact, were suspended and put under investigation for kicking a poor innocent Muslim lad in the face in Manchester Airport. Well, it turns out that the video was released and that Muslim lad was slugging female police officers in the face.
Yeah, so this story, I don't know whether you're going to go into the details, but they took exception to the fact that at airport security, we searched both men and women, and they didn't want their women to be touched because it's against Islam, which it is. However, this is just another example of their values being incompatible with the West, and it's, of course, thanks to Islam that we have to have these searches in the first place.
That is true. But anyway, yeah, so the sort of 19-year-old, I think 18, 19-year-old lad started punching female police officers in the face. And the male police officers were like, okay, spend a bit of time fighting with him, eventually get him to the floor, and he moves, and the guy kicks him in the face, because it looks like he's about to get up and start fighting again. I assume that's what they were thinking.
He also has his taser in his hand, doesn't he? And so his hands are occupied, and so only his feet are free.
Yeah. But anyway, so the police officers were, of course, in trouble for apprehending the violent criminal. And as far as I can tell, no one has been charged in this. So still, 3 months later, this man has just gotten away with just punching a couple of female police officers in the face. Why? Well, what am I supposed to assume?
Well, the police have been punished for this, as in the officers that responded to it, more so than the actual perpetrators of the crime.
That is correct.
And they attacked a bunch of people at an airport, breaking a woman's nose.
Yeah, there's a proper brawl, broke a woman's nose, and it's no charges. It's like, right, what am I supposed to assume the reason for that is? And the only thing I can think of is, well, the police officers were English and this person was not. And because, I mean, if this was like, Barry John, 26 from Humberside or something.
No one would care.
If he'd punched a bloody female police officer in the nose, broke her nose, and then he'd be straight to jail. Straight to jail. And rightly so, don't get me wrong, right? And then conversely, you've got like people like this chap, say ex-soldier jailed for anti-Islam post. Do you want to see the anti-Islam post that he went to jail for?
They're pretty tepid, aren't they?
It's unbelievably tepid, right? So this guy from Wales said, civil war is here. The only thing missing is bullets. That's the next step. That's in response to the Southport riots. And he ended up pleading guilty to stirring up racial hatred. Is that stirring up racial hatred, or is that an observation on the political precipice Britain is standing on?
He wasn't saying it was a good thing, was he?
No, he wasn't.
I'm particularly annoyed when people are not distinguishing between threats and warnings. And this definitely looks like a warning. It also reminds me of Elon Musk's claims about the situation in the UK after Southport.
Yep.
And it seems to me that it's very, you could say almost sadistic. It's like whenever we have people who are natives or in some respect pro-Western, the most ridiculously uncharitable interpretations of the claim is made. And when it comes to people who are of other persuasions, let's say, and they do something, it is always the case that the most charitable interpretation of what they did is presented as the main narrative.
Well,
Assuming they even get charged.
Yeah.
I imagine that he probably didn't lawyer up in the same way that these Muslims did, because they had their lawyers paid for, and so they got really expensive good lawyers.
Yeah.
Because loads of Muslims raised money for them, whereas this guy was sort of left on his own, I
With
imagine.
a state lawyer who obviously advised him, look, just plead guilty and you'll get 2 years in jail, but only one of those will be spent in prison. So he's spending a year in prison for this.
I think it's very it's very obvious. It's just we are at a stage of multiculturalism where the British establishment thinks that it has to virtue signal that it's anti-British.
Sure, and it thinks its job is to protect minorities from the majority. That's what the British state believes its almost its entire job is at this point. But again, why did he plead guilty? Well, it must have been that the court-appointed lawyer was just like, do this and it'll be the quickest thing. It's like, no, you should have said non-guilty. I'm going to contest this. This isn't a crime. I'm not advocating for anything. I'm observing. And that's obvious by the statement. And the only thing they'd be able to say is, well, what about implication by context? You can just argue the case and hopefully it comes out on your side. I think that you could have easily argued this. But anyway, so guy who says something about things goes to jail. Guy who punches woman in face, breaks her nose, doesn't even get charged. Woman who assaults politician on the campaign trail, no jail. So physically assaulting someone, no jail time. Saying something about the current political environment, year in jail.
Did you see that she had a Palestine pin on as she came out of the court as well?
Of course she did.
The irony of someone who makes their money via OnlyFans having a pro-Palestine pin.
Yeah, it's
you
rather
can
ironic.
Probably see it in one of the other pictures, but
Yeah, but anyway, she basically had to pay Farage about £600 to cover the costs. She had to pay a £154 victim surcharge to Mr. Farage and $450 in costs. And instead of going to jail for assaulting a politician on the campaign trail, which again, anyone would be able to frame this as an attack on the integrity of democracy, right? That's a deliberate attempt to intimidate a political figure in this country, right? Who's now an MP with 5 MPs. This should have been beyond the pale. She should have gone to jail for this.
And 4 million votes.
Yeah, and 4 million votes. Yeah, this is an attack on the political process in this country. Yeah. And if it was a reform supporter milkshaking Keir Starmer or something, do not do that, obviously, they would have gone to jail. They would have come down as hard as possible. No, she gets 12 rehabilitation activity requirement days, whatever they are. Well, it sounds like she's going to be in a bloody daycare or something. And 120 hours of unpaid work. Oh, my goodness.
She's going to be practicing drinking milkshake rather than throwing it. Who knows?
I'm sure she's going to be, really working hard. And contrast that to this rioter. Now, okay, rioting's bad, yeah. 9 years for helping fuel a fire, right? So he didn't start a fire. He fueled a fire, but okay, fair enough. Let's give him some jail time for that. I can understand this. So he was, this is Levi Fishlock, who is involved in the disorder outside the Holiday Inn Express in Rotherham. And so he was jailed for 9 years for helping that and trying to burn down a hotel housing asylum seekers. Yeah, okay, fair enough. 9 years. That's a long time. Then you've got a guy who raped a woman to death, and he gets 10 years. 10 years? So we're saying these are roughly equivalent. It's slightly worse. I mean, no one died. Right? This guy didn't kill anyone. He was trying to set fire to the hotel, so you could say, well, he's trying to. Okay, yeah, fair enough. But he actually did kill someone. This is a harrowing case, man.
This should be the death penalty, surely.
Well, you would think so, yeah.
If we had it.
Yeah, this would be a good argument to bring back the death penalty. So this woman was Natalie Schotter, right? She was 37 years old, mother of 3, had a 21-month-old daughter. She'd recently given birth, right? Her and her boyfriend, I think it's boyfriend, but partner, not husband, but she's in a relationship. She's an NHS clinical, or was an NHS clinical admin worker who lived a couple of miles from Southall, and she was suffering from postnatal depression because she couldn't see her baby during COVID because she was a frontline COVID worker. So someone else was looking after the baby, and so that's sad thing. I can't even imagine how difficult that would be, actually. It's terrible, right? And so she has a night out, which, as a parent, I'm telling you, is a rarity, right? So she goes out. There's CCTV footage of her, having fun, hanging out with people. She apparently, according to one guy who did not give evidence at the trial, provided a statement. He met some guy and they were sat on a bench in Southall Park. They did some amyl nitrate poppers, and she had been quite drunk, and so she lay down on the bench. She wasn't feeling well. Okay, she falls asleep. Okay, there's nothing life-threatening about this, right? The coroner points out that none of this is lethal. She would have just fallen asleep on the bench, woken up cold the next morning, and gone home, right? The person that she was with at 11:56 p.m. Was like, oh no, she's passed out. I better go find some help. So he goes to find some police officers. Finds 2 police officers outside the park, but they're like, no, we're busy dealing with something else. You're advised to call for additional support, but I guess he doesn't, or they don't arrive, or whatever, right? And then 20 minutes later, Mohammed Idal, or how you pronounce it, approaches Natalie. He appears to have been stalking her before he approached her. So he appears to have been watching her, like, oh look, vulnerable woman, right? Goes, wanders around her to make sure that she's not going to respond, and then begins orally raping her, and she ends up dying from this. And he goes at 12:32, comes back at 12:48, then leaves again at 12:51, driving away from the park, back to his wife and children. He stops off at a Shell garage to pick up some mouthwash and cat food, after already raping a woman to death on a bench. And so her mother's just like, well, I think what he did was premeditated. He was stalking her. He wasn't dithering. He didn't just come across her by chance. She thinks that he was out that night purposefully looking for someone to rape. Yeah, it just seems to be the case. Why was this person in our country?
Well, if our crime statistics are anything to go by, the name Mohammed seems to mean something here, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, during the trial, his father was there from the public gallery, and when they were playing the footage, he just got up and left the court. So yeah, no kidding. This is your son you've raised, man. Right. So anyway, Mohammed, again, notice how the pictures, you're not getting pictures of him, you're getting pictures of her.
Right? Whenever the victim is a sort of native Brit, they'll always show the victim if the person is foreign. And if it's the other way around, of course, they'll always show the perpetrator.
Yeah, this independent article doesn't have a single picture of Mohammed Idal in it, right? But anyway, so he was apparently jailed for life, which means 10 years and 8 months minimum term. 10 years.
Short life, isn't it?
Well, he's going to be out in 10 years. That's the minimum. And so, assuming he behaves well in jail.
And here is where what I said before about the interpretation given by the media and the narrative comes in. Because whenever you have people who are from one side doing something or saying anything, again, it's the projection of the pattern of the far right. But when you have people from, let's say, that community doing crime, and it's a lot of crime, it's always an isolated incident of someone who had mental illness.
Yeah, and this guy was a husband and father and was just out on this night as a predator, just looking for someone to attack, and he found someone vulnerable and attacked them. So, ladies, it's not really safe for you to go out and get drunk in Britain anymore. It's just not safe.
And also this behavior suggests that there is zero fear of there being consequences.
Well, you know what? That's exactly what her mother said. She said, quote, he seemed to think he was untouchable. So, yeah, that seems to be something that's in their minds for some reason. Anyway, again, BBC. Do we have a picture of him in here? Oh, we do finally have a picture of him.
Dear Lord.
Yeah, exactly. The state, right? But anyway, they point out that he was actually a dangerous offender who had previous charges brought against him. In 2022, he engaged in explicit sexual chat online with a 13-year-old that he knew was 13, while he was under investigation for rape. So, I mean, can we not just assume this guy's a perennial predator? Why is he in our country? Why have we brought
be here?
Yeah, why have we brought him here?
We also need to make an example of these people.
Yeah.
So people like him don't come here, and the way you do that is you kill them.
All right, calm down.
As in capital punishment.
Yeah. But I mean, I am totally for bringing back the death penalty. And if you kill someone after raping them to death, yeah, I think that's a perfectly good use of the punishment. But anyway, so and again, there's no question that it was him either. You know, his DNA was found in her mouth and things like that. The CCTV footage of him doing it. Again, you'd have to be such a moron to think that people aren't going to know. Like, there's no doubt that it's him. There's just no one else it could be. So we can't get this wrong in this case. We know it's him. He would be a great candidate for it. Anyway, there's weird things that come out of this as well. So this is a police officer called Adam Aspinall de Encarnacio, which is a Portuguese surname. But apparently he's been suspended and has been charged with sharing images of her being raped from the CCTV footage, as well as other images of women being raped from police cases. So he seems to be a weird perv who has been sharing these. Like, I don't know.
I think it could get any worse.
No, I know. It's just so weird. It's like, I just... Okay, so the Met Police just feel full of weird foreign perverts, are they? Oh, great. You know, I don't know what I'm supposed to say about it or take from it, but it's just like, okay, why? Why are we here? Anyway, moving on, there are a bunch of trials that are set for January the 20th. Any interesting trials coming up? Well, there's the trial of Anthony Essen. I wonder if we've got a picture of him in here. No, really, BBC. You haven't got a picture of him. Again, why? Why don't we have a picture of the criminal, right? So this chap, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Teaton, was stabbed by Anthony Essen. You know, I'm gonna just get Anthony Essen's picture up, see if we can actually find a picture of it.
We did a segment about Anthony Essen in late July.
Mm.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. I wonder why the BBC didn't put his picture in the thing. I wonder why. So anyway, yeah. Anthony's trial is on January the 20th. Interesting date, January the 20th. Then we have the trial of Ricky Jones, who we actually have a picture of. The Labour councillor who, after the Southport riots and then the sort of counter riots and protests that the media ginned up and the politicians, the Labour Party in particular, ginned up to get their sort of foreign client groups on the streets, this Labour councillor was like, we're going to have to go out and slit their throats. And he got suspended, and his trial will be on January the 20th. Weird that they're loading all of these. It just happened to be the same day. They just threw a calendar. Oh, January the 20th. What were the odds? And that just happens to be the same date as the trial of Axel Rudakabana. January the 20th. Again, just wow, January the 20th again. What are the odds? Or they're deliberately loading them all on the same day in order to essentially sort of flood news reports. And so when people say January 20th trial, they get other results or whatever. Who knows? Who knows why they're doing it? It just happens to be a massive coincidence. But honestly, you can't help but notice that it cuts in one direction and against another. And it's every single goddamn time. And the media is, again, totally complicit in this. Like, I'm so sick of seeing it. I'm just so sick of seeing it. I guess I'll leave that. It's just really annoying me.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, and if you want to see what else we're up to, you can see Harry become the James O'Brien whisperer, get into the mind of a left-wing broadcaster. And if you want to see all the other things that we're putting out, you can always follow us on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.